Good evening, everyone. My name is Johnny, and my partner is Kaylee. And tonight we are going to share with you a poem called The Chimney Sweeper. And the writer is called William Blake. So let us start now. This is our table of contents. I will be responsible for the background, title and summary, and theme. And my partner Kaylee will be responsible for the syntax, speakers, language form and tone, and use in language education. So first of all, let me introduce the writer of this poem, and his name is William Blake. William Blake was born on 28th of November in 1757 in London. Actually, William Blake was a very talented person. Besides being a poet, he was also a painter and a printmaker. And just like other famous poets, William Blake was actually largely unrecognized during his life, and he only got famous after he died. And in his poems, he shows a very strong attitude of rebellion against the abuse of class power, and he also opposed to slavery, and also he believed in racial and sexual equality. And then the second part is about the title and summary. So the title of this poem is called The Chimney Sweepers. And how much do you know about chimney sweepers? Indeed, a chimney sweeper is a kind of occupation that exists in the late 18th and the 19th century in England. At that time, many people, they are quite poor, so they need to sell their children, their boys, to clean the chimneys. The reason of that is because generally, those boys, they are very small in size, so they were able to climb up into the inner part of the chimneys and clean them. However, it is so sad to know that some of them, they died from falling through the chimneys. And also some of them, they died from different kind of lung cancers because they inhale so much of soot. So I will conclude that it is a very terrible, dangerous, and exhausting work for little children. And then here is the summary of the poems. The poem is told from the perspective of a chimney sweeper, that is the speaker. The speaker one day meets another new recruit. His name is called Tom Dacre. Tom is very unhappy and terrified because literally he did not know what is going to do and what is going to happen. However, the speaker tried very best to reassure and comfort Tom. And after that, Tom becomes relieved and he has a dream. Inside the dream, he is set free by an angel. And Tom believes that if he is being a good boy and do the job well, he will be fine and will go to the heaven. And in the heaven, there's no pain at all. All he gets is happiness. So at last, Tom wakes up and go to work. Although the work is still very hard and tedious, Tom's still very happy because he has a hope. And now we come to part 3. It is about the theme of the poem. So just like other poems, this poem carries multiple themes such as misery, death, hope, hardship in life, religion, child exploitation, and also inequality. And tonight we are going to discuss some of them. And the first theme is about misery. We all know that in this poem, those children, those chimney sweepers, they all led a very miserable life. We are able to find sentences like, my father saw me well get my tongue, who cried when his head that curled like a lamb's back was shaved. In the first sentence, so me, just like I mentioned before, those family, they are so poor, so they need to sell their children to work. And those boys, they cry because they get shaved on their heads. The reason of that, it is because it is more convenient to work inside the chimney, as you can imagine that it is so dirty to work this kind of job. And the other theme of this poem is about death. we can find sentence like were all of them locked up in coffins of black. So words like coffins and black, this word really signify the symbol of death in this poem. And although I told you that those children, they led a very miserable life, however, we can still find one positive theme in this poem. This is about hope. Some sentences like he opened the coffins and set them all free. He had God for his father and never want joy. And though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. And words like free, God, happy, and warm, they really give us a feelings of hope in this poem. However, this theme hope, many people criticize that. Is that a real hope or a false hope? Because we know that actually this is very hard for those children to get out of this hell or this kind of job. However, the writer hasn't interpreted this hope very so deeply. So the question is left to the readers to interpret by themselves. And other very important themes in this poem that the writer want to tell us is about child exploitation. So throughout the poem, we know the life of those chimney sweeper, those little children. They were sent to work in a very young age, and they are not supposed to work. So we can call it as a child exploitation. And according to that era, the history background is like after the Industrial Revolution, seldom people, they would go to, they won't be farmers, and the farmland decrease, and a lot of factories have been built, and people likely to work in the factory. And as I mentioned before, because many people, they are so poor, so they send their children to work. And basically, there were two reasons. First of all, because they have no money to raise the children, so they send them off. And the second reason is that by doing that, they can increase their family's income. And some of those boys, they are only 4 years old, and many of them, they are suffer from deformity of spine, legs, and arms. As we can imagine that because all day long, they need to work in a very small rooms that is inside the chimney. And also many of them contracted different kind of cancer, including testicular cancer. Finally, the report of employing boys as chimney sweepers was made to the Parliament Committee at that time in England. However, the practice was only abolished in 1875. That was 50 years after William Blake's death. So the question I want to raise here is, how about now? What is happening now? And how about the so-called very civilized modern world now? And it is also quite sad to know that actually not much has been changed. According to a very recent report by the United Nations, there are 1 out of 10 children around the world, they are forced into child labor. That means there are over 160 million children, they are forced into child labor. And you can imagine how deplorable are them. They earn a very little and need to work all day long. So you can see these pictures, they are all real. It is happening around us. It is filmed in different parts of the world. So I want to ask one question, is that, do we really care? Is there anything we can do to change this deplorable situation? Indeed, I do not have any answer, so I will leave this for all of you to think about it. And now we are going to read out the poems. The Chimney Sweeper, Songs of Innocence. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father saw me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in sooth I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre who cried when his head